Hey there, welcome to Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show, a show dedicated to progressive rock and other forms of rock music. So I'm going to do a video today. I've been thinking about this for a bit and going over in my mind why I wanted to do it and why I didn't want to do it. So anyways, I'm going to title this video, What is the Difference Here? So basically, I'm going to be talking about these two albums here. Rush's Caress of Steel and 2112. This was their third studio album. This one their fourth. This one was released at the end of 1975. This one in 1976. So, why did I choose these two albums? Well, I think I chose these two albums because I've always heard that this is, by a lot of fans, this is considered to be Rush's best album. Not all of them. A lot of them will choose Moving Pictures. But generally speaking, it's Moving Pictures or 2112 are considered to be their seminal albums. And this one, by a lot of people, consider this to be almost the end of Rush and one of their worst albums. But I don't view it that way. To me, and this is just my personal opinion, I actually like Caress of Steel better than 2112. It's actually one of my favorite Rush albums. I don't dislike this album at all. I like this album. It's not one of my top 5 favorites, but it's, and I get people that are amazed that I rate this one so low. And it's not that it's bad, it's just I like the other ones better. But anyways, we're not here to decide which one's better or which one's worse. Just wanted to talk about why there's such a distinct difference reaction by people to these two albums. So let's just talk about what these albums are first. Okay, so this one came out in 1975 as their third studio album. Has 5 tracks on it, including a album side, basically an album side song called Fountain of Lameth. This album has 6 tracks, so one more track. Same thing though, it has an album side track. They both have one album side track, and then the other side has a bunch of songs, basically. So in this one, the side 1, of course, is the bunch of songs. This one, it's the album length side, or the, well, in this case, it's the 2112 is on side 1, and then the group of songs on the back side, or on the B side. This one, it's the opposite. So other than that, there's not really a lot different as far as number of things. They're both by the same band, one right after another, but there's a big distinction between this album and that. A lot of people, like I said, think that this is maybe Rush's worst classic album, and this one is maybe their best album ever. So why is that? Well, I've come down to 2 reasons why. The first one is that the production of this album and the sound is a little bit choppy. The songs don't flow as smoothly. They're not as produced as well. But I think the songs on this album are also not as penetrable. They're not as easy to get into. But once this album has a chance to, you have a chance to digest it, maybe like me, you'll find that this is actually the better of the 2 albums, in my opinion. So why is this album so well liked? For the opposite reasons. This one, it runs a much smoother. It has a much smoother, better production sound to it, I think. And it's much easier to penetrate it. It's much more readily accessible, I guess is the word. This one is not as accessible. This one is harder to penetrate, not as accessible. This one is much more penetrable and much more accessible. So you have the two songs. You have the side one, which is the 2112, which is the classic, but it's the first two parts of this seven-parter: Overture and the Temples of Syrinx. Why? Why is this album so big? There you have it right there in the nutshell. Those two songs are so accessible. They are not only accessible to the prog nation of people who like prog music, because they're lengthy, they're complex, they're catchy as hell, the riffs, and they tell a progressive story, right? They're also accessible to the metal people who really like the heaviness of the guitars, the catchy riffs, both Overture and the Priest of the Temples of Syrinx. The real heaviness of those two particular tracks appeal to people a great deal, and because they're so catchy as well. Then you have on the flip side A Passage to Bangkok, which is also has that same kind of heavy, kind of catchy riff. Something for Nothing, another kind of catchy riff type song, And that's, I think, what makes this album stand out, is that easy penetrable, easy accessibility, catchy riffs, heavy riffs, and appears to appeal to both the metal community and the progressive rock community. And for that reason, this album suffers because of that. It doesn't have that accessibility. It's not as accessible. It's hard to penetrate. There are no songs here with great catchy riffs. Yes, Bastille Day has a different type of riff and it is a bit accessible, but the rest of the album doesn't lend itself to that accessibility. It doesn't have that appeal to both metal and progressive communities. It has a little bit of appeal to both, obviously, and once, like every good progressive rock album, once you give it time and listen to it a lot, you really come to appreciate the greatness of this album. At least I did. That's the way I see it. So, it goes back to that adage. This is the great one if you're looking for that quick, heavy, catchy, energetic, great feeling. You're going to get it off this one. This one, if you're patient, you will get the same thing. It'll just take a lot longer to get there. So that to me is the difference between the two albums. And even though this one didn't do very well initially, and this one did fantastic initially, I think they're both great albums in their own right. And there's a lot more in common with them than there are at odds with each other. Yeah. So for me, Caress of Steel is probably my third or fourth favorite Rush album. It's up there, pretty close, maybe fifth. But it's definitely a masterpiece. It gets the masterpiece stamp from me. 2112 never got that. It never got the top 5 from me. It never got that masterpiece stamp. And I think it's for the very reason that it was so accessible that it was gone in a flash for me. It just didn't have the same appeal. It doesn't have the depth to it that I think this one does. And I'm going to take some hits for this because there's people that absolutely love this album and think it's the best thing Rush ever did. And I'm not going to argue with it. I think it's a great, great album. I just think this is a better album. And that's really what it comes down to. So for today, we're just discussing them and why this one did so great and why this one almost ended the band's career. Anyways, here you have it, the Rush discussion. What's the difference? So you tell me what you think. Am I on? Am I off? Am I off my rocker? Well, I'm not in a rocker. Well, it's sort of a rocker, so maybe I am off my rocker. But anyways, I've thought long and hard about these things. I've spent a great deal of time listening to Rush in my life. more than half my life is spent listening to Rush. At different points in time in my music listening career, it was only Rush I would listen to. And they were the only band. Whenever I would feel down, I would listen to Rush. Whenever I feel up, I'd listen to Rush. And I listened to like more than 80% of my music was Rush at one point. So I've thought a lot about all of their albums. You might say I have distinct particular opinions about their albums, each and every one of them. What I really like about them and what I can't stand. Some of them I really don't like at all. Others I absolutely think are among the best albums ever done. But I always am willing to give a bad album another chance. And anyways, I hope you enjoyed this kind of one-off decision to do a comparison between Rush's third studio album, Caress of Steel, and their fourth studio album, 2112. So you have yourself a good day. If you like it, please like and subscribe. And take it for what it's worth. It's just a discussion about a couple of albums that many Rush fans love, and me included. So take care.